David Jennings adjusted his tie as the spacecraft descended onto Zaloria's vibrant surface, a planet renowned not just for its beauty but also for its crucial role in interstellar trade. As the chief negotiator for the Earth Trade Alliance, David's mission was to secure a deal that could prove vital for Earth's economy. Upon landing, David was greeted by Zalorian officials, their elongated limbs and iridescent skin shimmering in the planet's sunlight. Among them was Tarn, a lower-level bureaucrat who seemed more nervous than the others. "Welcome, Mr. Jennings. I am Tarn. I will assist with your documentation," Tarn said, his voice a melodic buzz. "Thank you, Tarn. I hope everything is in order," David replied, handing over his meticulously prepared dossier. As Tarn processed the paperwork, his 6 eyes flickered rapidly across the screen. It appears everything is mostly correct. Just a minor hiccup to sort out." "Mostly?" David raised an eyebrow. "I was assured all formalities were handled by my team." "It's just a small classification issue," Tarn reassured as he typed fervently, his fingers a blur. "Nothing to worry about, I'm sure." David watched, puzzled, as Tarn seemed to grow increasingly agitated. Finally, with a beep, the process was completed. "All set, Mr. Jennings. You will be escorted to your quarters." "Thank you, Tarn," David said, still unsure about the unease he sensed. As he was led through the bustling capital city by another official, Rax, he noticed the architecture, a blend of natural Zalorian crystal formations and advanced technology. "Rax, Tarn mentioned a hiccup with my paperwork. Should I be concerned?" David asked as they navigated through a busy plaza. Rax, whose demeanor was decidedly more relaxed than Tarn's, chuckled. "Zalorian bureaucracy is famous for its complexity. But it's nothing that can't be handled. You're here for the trade delegation, right?" "Correct. That's my primary mission," David confirmed. They arrived at a towering structure glowing with bioluminescent light. "This will be your home for the duration of your stay," Rax announced. "Oh, and tomorrow you meet your integration liaison." "Integration liaison? I thought we were here for trade discussions," David questioned, feeling a twinge of confusion. "Yes, well, it appears there was a slight mix-up in the filing. You're also listed for our cultural integration program. It's quite an honor, actually," Rax explained, seemingly oblivious to David's growing concern. David's mind raced. This was not part of the plan, and any deviation could jeopardize the negotiations. "And who will I be meeting?" "Mira, one of our most esteemed cultural officers. She will ensure your stay is both productive and enlightening." As Rax left, David stood alone in his new, luminous quarters, the reality of the situation settling in. What was supposed to be a straightforward trade mission was now complicated by an unexpected and possibly binding cultural assignment. How he handled this could define not just his career but also the future relationship between Earth and Zaloria. He needed to tread carefully but assertively. "Seems like simple bureaucracy, but now I'm bound by more than just trade protocols," David muttered to himself, peering out at the alien skyline, wondering about the figure of Mira and the role she would play in the days to come. Chapter 2. The Welcome Banquet. David stood at the edge of the grand hall, taking in the spectacle of the Zalorian welcome banquet. The room buzzed with the chatter of various dignitaries and the gentle hum of Zalorian music, its harmonies strange yet oddly comforting to his ears. Just then, Rax reappeared beside him, a friendly smile on his face. "Quite something, isn't it? Zaloria prides itself on hospitality." "It's impressive," David agreed, his gaze wandering over the exotic dishes being served on levitating trays. "I must admit, I wasn't expecting such a reception." "Ah, but you are a guest of honor," Rax exclaimed. "Now, let me introduce you to some key figures. Rax led him across the room to a group of Zalorian officials. David shook hands with each, exchanging pleasantries and nods, trying his best to remember names and titles. Then, a new figure approached, her presence commanding yet serene. "David, this is Mira," Rax announced. "She will be your guide and liaison during your stay." Mira extended her hand, her grip firm yet gentle. "Welcome, David. I hope to make your experience here as enriching as possible." "Thank you, Mira. I'm looking forward to learning more about Zaloria," David replied, noting her keen, observant eyes. "As am I about Earth," Mira responded with a smile. "Shall we dine? There's much to discuss." As they moved to the dining area, David was seated between Mira and another human delegate, Jonas, who seemed equally bewildered by the turn of events. "So, David, thrown into the deep end, I hear?" Jonas whispered, helping himself to a dish that looked like shimmering blue noodles. "You could say that," David chuckled softly. "I came for trade talks, and now I'm part of a cultural exchange." "Zalorian bureaucracy is legendary," Jonas said, his tone dry. "One wrong tick on a form, and you're in a different galaxy of paperwork." Mira overheard and laughed, a clear, melodious sound. "It's not usually so dramatic, but yes, our systems can be intricate." As the meal progressed, Mira detailed Zalorian customs and social etiquette, which fascinated David. The conversation then shifted to Earth, where David shared insights into human culture, politics, and economics. "Your planet has such rich diversity in cultures," Mira mused. "It's something we value highly here on Zaloria. Understanding that is crucial for our integration efforts." David nodded, his mind racing with the implications of his unintended role. "I'm eager to learn, although I admit the circumstances were unexpected." "The best lessons often come from unexpected sources," Mira replied, her gaze thoughtful. "Perhaps, together, we can turn this situation to both our people's advantage." Jonas, finishing his meal, leaned back with a grin. "Here's to unexpected lessons, then." He raised his glass, a signal for David and Mira to toast. The banquet continued with performances of traditional Zalorian dance and music, a spectacle of colors and sounds that left David in awe. Throughout the evening, he found himself increasingly at ease, drawn in by Myra's charisma and the genuine warmth of his hosts. As the event wound down, Mira suggested a walk through the illuminated gardens of the venue. "A bit of fresh air might do us good after such a feast." David agreed eagerly, curious about the glowing flora he'd glimpsed on his arrival. As they strolled through the vibrant garden, the air filled with sweet, alien scents, David felt a connection forming, not just with Mira but with Zaloria itself. This mission might not be what he expected, but it was shaping up to be an unforgettable experience. Chapter 3. The Breeding Contract. The next morning, David awoke to an urgent summons from Zaloria's central bureaucratic office. With a sense of unease, he met with Rax outside his quarters. "Good morning, David. I hope you're ready for another interesting day," Rax said, trying to inject some cheer into his tone. "Depends on what you mean by interesting," David replied, following Rax down the corridor to a transport that would take them to the government complex. Upon arrival, they were ushered into a sleek, modern office where an imposing figure awaited them. This was Halon, a senior official in the Department of Interspecies Relations. "Mr. Jennings, I'm Halon. I oversee the cultural integration program you've been inadvertently enrolled in," he explained, extending a hand. David shook it, his anxiety mounting. "Yes, about that. There seems to have been some mistake." Halon nodded, his expression grave. "Indeed, but as it stands, the documents binding you to the program have been finalized. This includes a component we haven't discussed yet." David's heart sank. "And what component would that be?" Halon handed David a digital tablet. "This is your contract. It includes a clause for a breeding agreement with a designated Zalorian partner. It's a traditional part of our cultural integration." David scanned the document, his disbelief growing. "I'm sorry, but this is not something I can comply with. I'm here for trade negotiations." Halon's tone was sympathetic but firm. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Jennings, but retracting now could cause significant diplomatic friction. We need to find a solution that respects both our protocols and your limits." Rax, who had been quiet, now spoke up. "What if we view this contract more as a formality, a theoretical exercise in cultural understanding, not a literal demand?" Halon considered this, then nodded slowly. "That might be acceptable. We value the spirit of the law as much as the letter. But we need to work out how this will be perceived publicly." David felt a glimmer of hope. "Perhaps we could redefine my involvement in the program to focus on other aspects of cultural exchange?" "That sounds promising," Halon agreed. "I will need to consult with our legal advisors. In the meantime, I suggest you continue with the planned activities and discussions with Mira. She will be a valuable ally in navigating this." Relieved, David and Rax left the office. Once outside, David took a deep breath, trying to process the morning's revelations. "Rax, how often do these types of misunderstandings happen?" David asked, half exasperated, half curious. Rax chuckled. "More often than you'd think, but you're the first human it's happened to. Let's just say Zalorian bureaucracy can be both a curse and a marvel." As they returned to the cultural center, David prepared for his day with Mira, now more aware of the delicate balance he needed to maintain between his official duties and the unexpected role he had been thrust into. Later, meeting Mira, David explained the situation. Her reaction was one of concern, but also determination. "We will find a way through this, David," Mira assured him. "Zaloria is known for its complex laws, but also for its flexibility. We'll work together on this." David nodded, grateful for her support. "I'm starting to realize that everything here is more complicated than it seems, but perhaps also more rewarding." Together, they walked towards a seminar room, ready to tackle the next challenge. The contract issue loomed large, but David felt less alone facing it with Mira by his side. Their collaboration, initially unintended, was proving to be an intriguing journey into the heart of Zalorian culture. Chapter 4. Cultural Lessons. David spent the following days immersed in a series of cultural workshops and seminars designed by Mira to facilitate his understanding of Zalorian society. Each session was carefully planned to not only educate, but also to integrate David subtly into the community. One morning, as they walked towards the Cultural Learning Center, David voiced his appreciation. "Mira, these sessions have been incredibly enlightening. I'm starting to see the layers and nuances of Zalorian culture." Mira smiled, pleased. "I'm glad to hear that, David. It's important for us that you truly grasp our way of life, especially under the current circumstances." Their first session of the day focused on Zalorian language and communication styles. The instructor, a charismatic Zalorian named Kev, introduced himself with a series of gestures that David learned were formal greetings. "Language is the gateway to understanding a culture," Kev explained as he projected holographic symbols in the air. "Let's start with some basic phrases and their contexts." David tried mimicking the gestures, fumbling a bit, which drew gentle laughter from the group. "It's harder than it looks," he admitted, smiling. "You're doing fine, David," Kev reassured him. "It's about practice. Let's try again." As the lesson progressed, David felt his confidence grow. The intricate hand movements and facial expressions that comprised the Zalorian language began to make sense, reflecting their deep emotional resonance and social intricacies. Later, they attended a session on Zalorian culinary traditions led by Chef Ronu, who introduced David to the art of preparing traditional dishes. The kitchen was filled with exotic aromas and ingredients David had never seen before. Food is central to our gatherings and rituals, Ronu explained as he guided David through the preparation of a spicy stew. Each ingredient has a symbolic meaning and contributes to the harmony of the dish. David carefully followed Ronu's instructions, chopping a luminescent vegetable. This is fascinating. On Earth, food brings people together too, but I've never thought about it as deeply symbolic. It's the same here, Ronu said, tasting the stew and nodding in approval. Cooking is a dance of flavors and meanings. You're picking it up quite well. The day ended with a music and dance workshop. The instructor, a lively Zalorian named Tila, demonstrated traditional dance moves that represented historical Zalorian tales. Dance is storytelling, Tila declared, moving fluidly in the center of the room. Each movement tells a part of our history, our struggles and joys. David watched, captivated by the expressive forms and the stories they conveyed. When it was his turn, he attempted the steps, his movements awkward but earnest. "You have a good sense of rhythm, David," Tila encouraged, clapping along to help him keep time. Exhausted yet exhilarated, David and Mira walked back to his quarters. "Today was quite the workout," David laughed, wiping his brow. Mira agreed, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "You're doing wonderfully, David. These lessons are not just about your integration, but also about building bridges." David nodded, deep in thought. "It's more than just learning. It's about understanding and connecting on a level I hadn't anticipated." As they said their goodbyes for the evening, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. This unexpected journey into Zalorian culture was challenging, but with Myra's guidance, he was beginning to see how much more there was to gain from this experience beyond the confines of trade and treaties. Chapter 5. The Challenge of Integration. David's growing familiarity with Zalorian customs began to draw mixed reactions from the local populace. While many appreciated his earnest efforts, there was a palpable undercurrent of skepticism among some of the more traditional Zalorian circles. One evening, while attending a public forum on interplanetary relations, David sensed the challenge would intensify. The forum, hosted by a respected Zalorian elder named Zor, aimed to discuss the implications of human and Zalorian interactions. As David entered the forum alongside Mira, Zor approached them with a formal nod. "Mr. Jennings, it is good to see you participating in our public discourse." "Thank you, Elder Zor. I believe it's important to engage fully with your community," David replied, keen to make a positive impression. The discussion began with Zor outlining the historical caution Zaloria had maintained in its extraterrestrial engagements. "Our people value our traditions deeply," Zor stated, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The presence of an Earth representative in a cultural exchange of this magnitude is unprecedented." David listened intently, then took the opportunity to respond. "I understand the concerns that come with such interactions. I'm here not only to learn, but to ensure that our cultural exchange respects and honors Zalorian values." A murmur ran through the crowd, some nods of approval mingling with skeptical glances. A young Zalorian, Sci-Fi, stood up. "But how can we trust that Earth's intentions are as honorable as you claim? History is filled with examples of cultural dilution." David considered his words carefully before answering. "That's a valid concern, S.A. All I can offer is my commitment to genuine dialogue and understanding. We seek not to dilute, but to enrich each other's cultures." Mira, sensing the tension, added, "David has shown great respect and curiosity about our ways. His participation in our cultural practices has been approached with humility and eagerness to learn." The discussion shifted as another elder, Harrow, raised a question. How do you see this cultural exchange impacting Zalorian society in the long term? David replied, cultural exchanges are bridges, paths to greater understanding and cooperation. My hope is that by learning from each other, we can build a stronger, more connected interstellar community. The forum continued with robust debate, and David felt each question sharpened his understanding of Zalorian concerns and aspirations. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Zor approached David. "Mr. Jennings, your words tonight have been well received. It is clear you are making an effort to comprehend our stance," Zor acknowledged. "Thank you, Elder Zor. I am grateful for the opportunity to learn and share," David said, relieved by the acknowledgement. As they left the forum, Mira remarked, "That went better than I expected." "You're making progress, David. It feels like navigating a minefield sometimes, but it's worth the effort," David admitted, smiling wryly. In the following days, David continued to attend various cultural functions, each event deepening his integration into Zalorian society. Despite the challenges, his relationship with Mira also grew, the shared experiences bringing them closer. One afternoon, while walking through a market filled with exotic goods, David and Mira discussed his ongoing integration. "It's not just about fitting in, it's about understanding and appreciating what makes your culture unique," David reflected, examining a piece of local artwork. Mira nodded. "And you're doing an admirable job at that. It's not easy, but it's certainly commendable." Their conversation was interrupted by a vendor, who recognized David from the forum. "Mr. Jennings, your speech was very insightful. It's good to see someone trying so hard to bridge our worlds." David thanked the vendor, pleased. As they continued their walk, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each step of integration, each challenge faced, added another layer to his understanding of Zaloria and its people. Chapter 6. The Revelation. As David's understanding of Zalorian culture deepened, so did his involvement in the complexities of their society. However, a surprising turn of events awaited him during a routine visit to Halon's office to discuss further adjustments to his cultural integration program. Halon greeted David with a serious expression as he entered the office. "Mr. Jennings, I'm glad you're here. We need to address a rather unexpected matter that has come to light regarding your participation in our program." David sat down, his curiosity piqued. "What's the issue, Halon?" Halon shuffled through some papers on his desk before continuing. "It appears that the original mistake in your paperwork was not an error at all. Our investigation has revealed that it was deliberately orchestrated by a faction within our government." David was taken aback. "Deliberately? But why would anyone do that?" "The faction believes that the best way to test an alien species' compatibility and adaptability with our culture is through full immersion, much more than what standard diplomacy would entail," Halon explained. David processed this information, his mind racing. "So, my entire presence here, the contract, it was all a setup?" "In a manner of speaking, yes," Halon admitted. "However, not everyone in the government supports this method. It's a controversial tactic that I and many others do not agree with." David leaned back in his chair, trying to contain his frustration. "Where does this leave us now? What about the trade negotiations?" Halon sighed. "The trade negotiations are still important, but this revelation could potentially complicate matters. We need to find a way to navigate this delicately." David thought for a moment before responding. "I need to discuss this with my superiors back on Earth. However, I am also personally invested in seeing this through, not just for the trade deal, but to understand the full extent of your cultural dynamics." Halon nodded. "I appreciate your dedication, Mr. Jennings. I suggest we continue with the cultural program officially, but also use this opportunity to subtly investigate further into this faction's intentions and reach. Agreed, David said. And I'll need Myra's help with this. She's been instrumental so far. I'll arrange for you to have more autonomy in your activities. You should have the freedom to explore our society more deeply, Halon proposed. As David left Halon's office, he met with Mira, who had been waiting outside. He shared the details of the conversation with her. Mira looked concerned but resolute. This is troubling, David. But you have my full support. We'll navigate this together. Over the next few weeks, David and Mira worked closely, attending various cultural and political events while discreetly gathering information about the faction that had manipulated David's assignment. Their collaboration grew stronger, and their evenings often ended with long discussions about their findings and the implications for both Zaloria and Earth. One evening, as they walked through a serene park, David reflected on the situation. When I first arrived, I thought this was just a bureaucratic snafu. Now, it feels like I'm in the middle of a political intrigue. Mira smiled wryly. Welcome to Zaloria, David. It's never just about paperwork here. But remember, you're not alone in this. David looked at Mira, grateful for her partnership. Thank you, Mira. It's your support that has made all the difference. As they continued to unravel the threads of the conspiracy, David realized that his journey on Zaloria was about more than just surviving a cultural mishap. It was about uncovering truths, both political and personal, that would ultimately shape the future of human and Zalorian relations. Chapter 7. A Bond Beyond Contracts. After weeks of navigating Zalorian politics and culture, David and Mira found themselves in a complex web of alliances and agendas. The truth about the faction that manipulated David's assignment was clearer, revealing their intent to test human adaptability for a potential deeper alliance, one not based on equality but control. One late afternoon, David and Mira met in a secluded garden to discuss their latest findings and plan their next move. The air was fragrant with the blooms of alien flowers, a stark contrast to the seriousness of their conversation. David, we've gathered substantial evidence against the faction. It's time we present this to the Council, Mira stated, handing him a data pad filled with reports and communications they had intercepted. David reviewed the information, his expression somber. This goes deeper than we thought. It's not just about testing me or any human. It's about setting a precedent for how Zaloria treats all foreign entities. Exactly, Mira nodded. We need to expose this before it escalates further. I've arranged for us to speak at the next council meeting. It will be our chance to bring this to light. David looked up, his resolve hardening. Let's do it. It's not just my duty. It's our chance to steer this in the right direction. The days leading up to the council meeting were intense. David and Mira spent hours preparing their presentation, refining their arguments, and anticipating counter-arguments. They met with Halon and other allies to solidify their support. On the day of the council meeting, the Grand Hall was filled with members of the Zalorian government, the media, and representatives of various interstellar communities. The air was charged with anticipation. David and Mira stood side by side as they presented their findings. David began, his voice steady. Honorable council members, we stand before you to uncover a truth that concerns not only my presence on Zaloria, but the integrity of our interspecies relations. Mira took over, detailing the manipulation, the intent behind it, and the potential repercussions. This faction sought to use David as a test, a means to establish a protocol that would put all future interspecies interactions under Zalorian control, disguised as integration. The council murmured, some members shocked, others defensive. A senior councillor, Vero, stood up, his tone accusatory. This is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? David stepped forward, displaying intercepted communications and testimonies from various bureaucrats who had been coerced or bribed into supporting the faction's plan. "Here is the proof, Councillor Vero. We urge you to consider the implications of allowing such actions to continue." The debate that followed was heated. David and Mira defended their position with facts and measured arguments, appealing to the Council's sense of justice and the Zalorian values of fairness and respect. After hours of discussion, the Council voted to conduct a full investigation, suspending the implicated members pending further inquiry. The decision was a significant victory, and as the crowd dispersed, Halon approached David and Mira. "Your courage today has made a difference," Halon said, genuinely impressed. "You've not only protected Earth's interests, but also upheld our principles." As they left the council chamber, David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to Mira, gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "We did it, Mira. Thanks to you." Mira smiled, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and satisfaction. "We did it together, David. This is what true partnership looks like." Their walk back through the garden was lighter, the evening air sweeter. They had started as forced partners due to a bureaucratic error, but through the trials and challenges, their relationship had evolved into something profound and real. As they paused to admire a sunset, the colors of the sky blending with the alien landscape, David realized that whatever the future held, their bond would endure beyond contracts, politics, or any external pressures. It was a bond forged in adversity, strengthened by mutual respect and shared ideals. Chapter 8. The New Accord. The aftermath of the council meeting brought a significant shift in Zalorian politics and David's role on the planet. With the investigation into the faction underway, a new atmosphere of transparency and cooperation began to emerge. David and Mira were at the heart of these changes, working together to rebuild trust and redefine human-Zalorian relations. A few weeks later, David sat in a newly established committee room, dedicated to reforming the cultural integration program. Beside him was Mira, and across from them sat Halon and a newly appointed councillor, Jennings, who was known for his progressive views. "Thank you all for coming," David began, scanning the room filled with both human and Zalorian representatives. "Today, we lay the groundwork for a new chapter in our interactions, one based on mutual consent and equality." Jennings nodded, his demeanor open and thoughtful. "It's crucial that we learn from past mistakes. Mr. Jennings, your experience, while regrettable, provides us with a unique opportunity to set a precedent for how we handle interspecies relations moving forward." Mira chimed in, her voice firm. "The revised program will need to emphasize transparency and volunteerism. No one should be bound by agreements they don't fully understand or agree to." The discussion that followed focused on drafting guidelines that would protect the rights and dignity of all participants in any cultural exchange. The atmosphere was collaborative, and as each member contributed, it was clear that a genuine effort was being made to ensure fairness and respect. As the meeting drew to a close, Halon turned to David. "Mr. Jennings, your involvement has been instrumental in bringing about these changes. Would you consider continuing to assist us, perhaps as a liaison in the program?" David was taken aback by the offer. He looked at Mira, whose supportive smile told him she believed in their continued partnership. "I'm honored, Halon. I'll need to discuss it with my superiors back on Earth, but I am very much inclined to accept." After the meeting, as they walked through the corridors of the government complex, David and Mira discussed the future. "Looks like our adventure together isn't over yet," Mira remarked, her tone light but sincere. David laughed, a sense of contentment settling over him. "It seems so. This started as an assignment I never expected, but it has turned into something much more significant." They stopped by a large window overlooking the capital city, its buildings aglow with the early evening light. "You know, when I first arrived, I felt like I was in over my head," David confessed, watching the bustling streets below. "But now, Zaloria feels like a place where I've made a real impact." Mira nodded. "And you have. We both have. Together, we've changed how two species will interact forever." As they prepared to part ways for the evening, David turned to Mira. "Would you like to have dinner tonight? There's a little place I found that serves both Earth and Zalorian dishes. We can celebrate our new beginning." "That sounds perfect," Mira agreed, her eyes bright. "A celebration of new beginnings and new challenges." As they left the building, walking side by side into the bustling city, David felt a profound connection to Zaloria and to Mira. What had started as a bureaucratic blunder had blossomed into a powerful alliance, one that would influence not just their own lives but the future of all who sought to bridge the gap between worlds. Together they stepped into the twilight, ready to face whatever challenges and joys lay ahead, bound not by contracts or duty, but by a shared vision of understanding and cooperation. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, together.